Welcome back to the Soul Sync. What are we really capable of? Not what we've been told, not what we've already done, not what seems sensible, but what is actually possible for a human being. Because somewhere along the way, we start collecting words: realistic, impossible, talented, ordinary, spiritual, scientific, right and wrong. And then we collect words about ourselves. I am this. I am not that. I could never. And perhaps that's where some of the boundaries begin. Not in reality, but in language. Mediumship has made me question those boundaries again and again. What are we capable of perceiving? What is consciousness? What happens when something doesn't fit the explanation we already have? And do we need to rush to explain it, or can we simply become curious? My next guest today, Nicola Farmer, is also a medium. Nicola understands something I think is incredibly important. Words matter. So today we explore mediumship, science, spirituality, storytelling, grief, responsibility, and the stories we tell ourselves about what is and what isn't possible. Where are the limits? We discuss what are human beings truly capable of achieving if we believe we can. We discuss how the words you speak truly affect your reality. This is my conversation with fellow medium Nicola Farmer. Enjoy. Nicola Farmer, Nicola Farmer, Nicola Farmer. Welcome back to the Soul Sync. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you on this very sunny Sunday afternoon.
Very Sunday, but not quite as hot as it's been, which is an absolute relief, because after some recent recordings, I've been almost peeling myself off this leather chair afterwards. You know, that horrible state you get when you're all, you need your underwear changed afterwards because you're sticking to items of furniture.
Little too much information there, Jason.
Yes. I'm going to lose people before we've even started. It's a delight to have you back on, and you've been on a few times before. And I will say from the very beginning, because I'm likely to forget this, but we are doing a platform evening of mediumship, you and I, on this coming Friday, the 28th of August. If you're listening to this after that, next year, then apologies, you've missed it. But we are doing that, and we're excited about that because it's going to be an evening of love, laughter, spirit connection.
It is. It's going to be a lovely, lovely evening. And, it's going to be so interesting to see what unfolds. It's going to be amazing.
You never know what's going to happen in these types of demonstration type scenarios. You can have an inkling, but I think it's better to just always be in that moment. I'm starting to feel now, because we're less than a week, getting that sort of buzzing of energy in my stomach where it's like, oh, I'm a bit nervous, I'm a bit excited, and it feels like a nice feeling. It feels like a building effect. And do you know what? The last time I did mediumship, on the days leading up to it, especially on the day, that's why I couldn't sleep the night before, because I think it was excitement.
Yeah, there's a fine line between feeling anxious and excited, and that fine line, some people, well, actually most people, we're so used to identifying those feelings as anxiety, but actually, not only should we be excited, but imagine how excited spirit are to have a voice.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because even if you think about any type of situation, when someone is pushing themselves out of their comfort zone massively, a school concert or platform mediumship, whatever it might be, the first thing we do normally jump to when we get that feeling is, oh God, it's anxiety. And we attach a negative to it, don't we?
Exactly.
But it's a building of nerves and excitement. And sometimes I think if you don't feel that, then, that's probably not a positive thing.
No, but I always say to people, if you stand on the stage to sing a song in a choir on your own, you've had a script to either use or learn.
Yes.
If you're an actor, if you're a presenter, you have everything laid out in front of you, and you either read it or you've learnt it. With mediumship, there's no script.
There's that, but I think there's also the fact that when we look at someone do a performance like that, a lot of the time we will look at that person and go, "Oh, I wish I could be that good," or "I wish I could sing like that, but we don't at all take into consideration the journey, the work someone's had to do to get to that place. And mediumship is no exception to that rule, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Because, in fact, I would say more work has to go into mediumship because you've got to put all of your faith into the unknown.
You have, and you're also in a position where you've got someone in front of you that you don't know, and not because we won't even go into reading for people because that's a whole other kettle of fish. But for someone you don't know, and when you're learning this, I remember thinking to myself, I have to get this right. I'm saying I've got someone's uncle with me. So what you do in those early days, mediums do, is they go very safe. They don't go with exactly what they feel. It's, I might have this. And that even in itself robs you of that power. Because that ties into one of the central questions I wanted to delve into today on this episode. Because we are both people who I think have a lot of credentials, Nicola, to talk about this without making it ego related. But what becomes possible when we stop defining ourselves by what we think we are capable of? What does that question immediately bring to your mind?
That anything's possible.
It is, and it sounds simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it really should be simple, because human minds have this innate ability to overcomplicate everything. We're almost programmed to make it complicated, and it shouldn't be that way at all. It should be as simple as possible.
That's what I found so difficult about mediumship, is even the very concept, and when the penny dropped that all this sitting, trying, forcing, pushing is actually hindering me. And it's the simplicity of it that makes it so very difficult, does it not? Because in any other area of our life or the behaviours that we've learned, we feel that it should be difficult or it should be harder than it actually is. And we can't comprehend that, can we, a lot of the time?
Exactly. And, I'm sure we'll come on to this about language, but for a very long time, mediumship has been called mental mediumship, and that instantly brings the brain into place, or into play even. And so, but as a medium, the brain should just be the processor. Everything else about you as a human being, as a medium, should be about the essence of spirit. So, it doesn't have to be complicated. And I think language that we use and the mindset that we get ourselves into is absolutely key to being a good medium.
It is. And it takes a long time, mediumship, to learn or unlearn a lot of the things that you need to work on in order for it happen. And I feel that at the beginning it flowed so well, but at the beginning the problem was at the very start of my journey was it flowed too well, where it was effortless. Then when it sort of stopped working so well, when I started really caring about it, now I care about mediumship because I want to develop it. It was at that juncture when I started trying, it stopped working. So what did I want to do? Try harder, beat myself up, Jason. You must try more to sit in the power. And when I am sitting in the power, I'm trying to connect. And it's not happening. And the more I try, Nicola, the less it's working.
Exactly. And that's the problem. I'll bring it back to language every time. The word try allows failure. So while we're trying, it's like we're pushing the boundaries so hard that we're failing at it. One of my favorite sayings is fake it till you make it. I love that saying, but are we actually faking it, or are we just bypassing the left brain so that we get it, so much easier? Because, it doesn't have to be hard, none of it. And we've all been there. We've all had to really put effort into developing what we see mediumship should be. But I think that the thing that's got lost in translation is actually, what does spirit want us to be?
We'll be right back.
Hello there, Soul Sync, it's me. I interrupt this episode for just a moment to ask if you find this podcast at all helpful, please leave a review on the platform where you listen to them. It helps other people to find it and it means the world to me. Now enjoy your episode. I believe Spirit wants us to be individuals and to be totally ourselves and to be totally creative in what we do and to be the most truest expression of ourselves that we can possibly be.
Exactly. And that's what we don't have to try to be. Because when we're being our natural organic self, Spirit can make that blend with us in such an easy way. So it's a bit like, the fluidity of being yourself or them trying to get through a brick wall because we're trying to be something that we're not.
Even the word trying suggests that it's not going to be easy. It's going to require effort. So I'm going to have to work at it.
Yeah, but we shouldn't have to because we are Spirit. So all we're being asked to do is, Nicola, Jason, step aside. Let's communicate with your spirit so that we can have this, dialogue that we only want your mouth to move.
So why is it then so many people, don't feel that it's as easy as you and I talking, if indeed, and of course it is, because, we are talking to another soul, something that we are.
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that. And, we could sit here and debate it till the cows come home. But the thing is, it's all to do with the human mind. And you know what else I think, Jason? I think it's because people feel they have to be perfect. Another one of my favorite sayings is, let's be perfectly imperfect.
There's something so beautiful in that, even just to be authentic. I'm so drawn to authenticity and that kind of thing, because that's, how I try to live my life now, to be the most authentic person I can. And, that's kind of what I pride myself with. And I think if I can't be authentic around someone, that's a very important barometer of, who I want to spend time with, is how much myself I can be. But that's not always, easy for people. We can't all be in an ideal situation of, currently sat at home on my arse, not working. I'm making out as if I'm unemployed at the moment. I'm very busy doing many Jason things. Yes. But, it's, I can't even remember the point I was making now.
Well, actually, I'm going to raise a point here because something's just popped into my mind and I think it's very valid to say this. Developing mediums, practicing mediums, advanced mediums, whatever people want to call themselves, I think it comes down to the expectation. And I think that plays a major role in so many mediums' lives. What is expected of them? Have we ticked the list? Have I done A, B, and C during that connection, that communication? And I think over a long period of time, there's been like this, I don't know even what the word is, but like a description of what a medium should be. And I feel that has played a major role and actually possibly have held a lot of people back from developing to their best ability to be the authentic medium because they're trying to tick the list of what's expected.
I totally understand what you mean, because it's a very complex thing to even unravel this, because how we perceive ourselves is very complicated, and even the standards we set for ourselves and where we feel we should be, and why is that, and why do we sometimes hold ourselves to these standards that seem so high that it's the standards in the first place that are the problem in actually getting to that place. And there's so many ways that you can unravel that. But I want to go back to when to quote your phrase just now, and it was something I used to say a lot Fake it till you make it. Because I want to take you there because I, for instance, have lived a catch me if you can life so far of magician, cabin crew, police officer, recruitment business, medium, podcast host. Now I'm adding to my next one, standing on platform doing mediumship. But even when I was in my early days of recruitment, I used to do that fake it till you make it. And I used to stand in the front of the mirror every day with affirmations of I'm going to be the best this. And at the beginning, I didn't believe it. And I felt like an absolute wally, standing in front of the mirror doing it, my younger 24-year-old self. And, I did feel like an idiot. But there is something in that. And there's something in the fact that some of those versions of Jason, and a lot of those versions of Jason back there, probably would have thought the later versions of Jason, it would have been completely impossible. If someone had told me at the start of my police officer days, fast forward 4 years later, yes, you would go through one of the worst experiences in hell, actually, in your time in the police, but spit you out 4 years later, you're then, got a business with multi-million pound turnover. I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have thought you bonkers.
Yeah, but that's probably why we don't know what we're going to be doing, because we would run a mile. We wouldn't do it. We would not do it. But, I've never actually had a career. I've always had lots of different jobs. I've worked in sales, I've worked in recruitment, I've done so many things. But, one day I just sat there and I looked at all the jobs I've had since I left school, and I wrote a list of everything I learned in those jobs that now play out in my role now. So I kind of look at it as a form of grooming.
Yes.
I mean that in the most positive way, of course.
Oh, it's as you say it. You was going to evoke laughter in me now. You're using your sidekick to lead me up a garden path. She's turning up. I'm going to have to put the explicit thing by this already. I can tell as when I publish.
But I really do, because, when I was a kid, my parents made me stand up and do public speaking. And I hated them for it. I was like, please don't put me in front of all those people. But I'm so grateful for that now, because I can stand up and speak in front of people. So all those checkered jobs or, backgrounds that we've had, including all of the traumas, are absolutely playing out a role in what we're doing now.
Do you know what? It's even this place I've arrived at now, when you're almost describing things in such a way where it really resonated then, because what I'm trying to achieve now since leaving my business, and I'm having more clarity on it all the time on what do I want to do, but it is about pulling all these strands together, because what made me such a great recruiter was because it was for years I was using my psychic faculties. I've honed those, I honed them in the police. I've always had a bit of a anti-bullshit detector, to be quite honest with you. I used to get hunches when people used to say to me in my police station, they used to say, they used to call me, I've already sworn once now, so I may as well do it again, but they used to call me a shitbagnet, because I used to, wherever I go, I'd find a crime and I'd come back with an arrest in no time at all. And, then all those skills got pulled together, the vibrancy of my cabin crew days, the vibrancy of my Virgin days, and that was the inspiration that fueled everything at the company and how I wanted it to be. So it is about pulling all these strands together, isn't it? But a lot of the time, people don't always do that, because they lack the belief and the potential in the skills that they've got.
Exactly, because nobody's saying to them, stop and evaluate who you are. Look back through your life and say, what has happened to me in my life that I can now feed into being a psychic, being a medium, being a healer, being, that spiritual person? Because all of those things playing out for you to be the best version of yourself, when you reach that point, when you surrender and say, okay, I'm a medium.
And do you know what? I'm not someone who is backwards in coming forwards at times.
Really?
Well, yes, you might think that. A lot of people often think that I'm this shy. retiring person, and I can actually be, you put me in a group of people though. I'm one of those people who sits back and kind of makes an assessment, but then if there's an opportunity to throw my hat in the ring, I will put my hands up pretty quickly.
They say you've got to be careful of the quiet ones.
You do. Because it's the quiet ones that make me nervous. When I'm in a room and someone isn't talking, I'm thinking, who are they? But joking to one side, you have groomed me or inspired me, yes, in parts of my mediumship. And one thing I am going to be eternally grateful to you for is language, because, the words we use really do create the world we live in, don't they? And, I guess a question for you, because you are so sensitive to language, what's your thoughts on, do our words simply describe, our experience, or do you feel they actually kind of constrain it? What's your thoughts, and how would you explain this to people? Because it took me a while to really become aware, but what made me learn is when you said, when I said to you, I want to stop going in my head with my mediumship, and you said, well, stop using the word think.
Exactly. And I don't think language stops us. I think our language defines us. And that's massive, because every single word that we use is a vibrational frequency. It's putting something out there. And for me, language is so important. And also having a broad spectrum of language as well. Because one of the exercises I give my students is to go by thesaurus. I did this with you. Look up, choose one word every day and learn 5 different words. Because if we don't have a broad spectrum of language, then we're limiting the language that spirit can use through us as well. But when I said to you, just stop using the word think, and I'm pretty sure I said replace it with I feel. When we move into feeling mode, we're moving into the sensitivity of our spirit. And when we move into that sensitivity, then we are ready to be blending with spirit, to be the communicator, to be that storyteller. So replacing I think with I feel is a huge step in that development of the sensitivity that we need.
Exactly. And even that in itself was so powerful for me. And I've become very aware of my language. And I'm not the biggest reader, and I've said that before on this podcast, but I do the dictionary and thesaurus exercise every day, because to have that wider paint palette of language, can help you in any aspect of your life. This isn't just about mediumship, but mediumship is, you make that point, because if we don't know a word, how on earth can that spirit person use it unless you trust enough to start going into some kind of spirit trance ad lib? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I encourage people to do all the time, and this is specifically with my work with children, when we're working with them, we never ever ask them a question. So if I'm saying to a child, or I wanted to say to a child, tell me what color you see on the page. Or sorry, what color do you see on the page? I would say, tell me what color. Because any form of questioning has to go through the left brain. The left brain is the perceptual side of the brain. It's the analytical side. So the minute we start questioning our mediumship or questioning spirit, the left brain becomes so active that it kind of takes us off track. So even practicing every day in life, instead of saying to you, how are you today, Jason? You've got to answer me through your left brain. You've got to find the most perceptual, analytical answer you can give me. But if I say to you, Jason, tell me how you're feeling today, you can spurt it out immediately, because your right brain's going, I've got this.
I was just doing it as you said it. And you do. When you say, Jason, how you think. The first thing I'm doing is I'm thinking, what can I say? But
Yes.
how I'm feeling, I'm feeling absolutely marvelous. I'll tell you, on a Sunday evening, I've even got a new back cushion, feeling
Oh,
quite comfortable. But it's so important because the words we use bring about change in the quickest way possible. And I feel that if you want to bring a radical change in your life, be aware of that language that you are speaking and the language of the inner voice we have, the narrator, the sometimes very unhelpful chatter of the mind. And be aware, if you're going to start wanting to develop something, whether it be mediumship, your psychic, or whatever, and you start saying, well, I'm not a medium yet, I'm not a psychic, but I'm working on it, I'm training.
mhm.
You are stealing yourself of power. And, if you're going to say, I could never do that, guess what? You probably can't. So you've got to be aware of that. But even I catch myself at times. And during this period of transition or change, every now and then I have the ego pop up with, oh, what you're going to do then? Is it going to work? And I think, bog off, will you, man? Bog off, and I sort of, sometimes I gently train it and say, okay, go in the corner. And other times it's like, do one,
Oh,
I don't need to hear that today. But you have to work on that. And that is difficult, because if you've had a childhood of, someone telling you all the time that you need to work for that, success is something that's, got to be hard, or, you've just been brought up even in a way that, you've associated that you have to work to be loved, or whatever that might be. These things are deep wired within you. So it takes work, doesn't it?
it does. And unfortunately, many people are programmed in such ways that the subconscious has got such a strong hold over the human mind that, if you tell them black is white, they would believe you, because they're
Mm,
conditioned to be told what they can and can't do. And education, I'm not against education. We all need that basic education, but it just doesn't give enough for children growing into, adults, the opportunity to be creative, to be, I talk about the right brain, but the right brain is the intuition, it's the creativity, it's everything that we need in life to not survive, but live. But the conditioning that, sits beautifully in the subconscious is going to be played out through the ego that says you're never going to be a great medium, because, people are going to judge you for what you're doing, or, or they're just going to look at you from a perspective that, oh, she wasn't quite right with that. And immediately they'll jump on the bandwagon, as in that was wrong. I watched a reel recently on social media, and it was this teacher standing in front of a classroom of teenager students, and he was writing the 9 times table up on the board, and he got to 10 times 9, he put equals 91, and the whole class erupted into laughter because he got it wrong. And he just waited for them to settle down. He turned round, he looked at them, and he said, you mocked me for one wrong answer, but you didn't celebrate me for the other 9 correct ones. And that stuck in my mind, Jason, because, we live in a world of criticism, we live in a world of judgment. And until people soften and give everybody a chance to make those mistakes and learn from them, but mostly to celebrate all the successes,
mm,
that's what needs to shift. And as a medium, we're born sensitive. We make those connections. We understand the connection with spirit, and we become more sensitive. And then spirit turn around and go, and now it's time to toughen up.
mm,
And in that toughening up process, it's not toughening up for spirit. It's toughening up in a world that's going to judge you the immediately you make them, a wrong move or say something wrong. But we've got to get over that. We've got to get bypass the fact that we're human and we're going to make mistakes. But we've got to start celebrating the successes.
We do. And I much more like that even myself now. And I encourage all the little small wins. And actually, it was very much that I'm sure was responsible for a lot of my early days recruitment success. I used to be someone who was very superstitious, and I'd have crystals on my desk. I'd have slot machines. And I remember actually, it used to drive my boss mad at the time. Every time I'd do a BD call, I'd pull the handle on my slot machine. If I got through in it, it did a ding, ding, ding. And I used to get through to so many calls, you see, I'd be polling it all the time. And then there was a clear desk policy implemented. Not long after that, I did one. I started at another company. You take my Lucky Charms, I'm gone. That's what I said. But it does, the way you mentioned there about the mind being like a computer program, it's a good way to look at it, isn't it? Because we are today who we were yesterday in a lot of senses, and a lot of people don't change their programming at all. And my late father, bless him, he was a bit of a glass half full program running all the time. I would say always that would be the dinner table. You'd have two sides of the table. You'd have him with the glass half empty, and then you'd have me with the optimistic view. But he's made me the person I am today. It was that conditioning. Why have I always driven myself so much? Because I would a lot of the time. I wouldn't get the 10. I wouldn't get the 9, and he'd say about the 10. I'd probably get the 6, and he'd say about the 8. But academia was never my massive strong point back then. But it's important, because if we're always describing ourselves in a certain way, you're not going to do this. At what point does the description become an identity?
We'll be right back.
If you're interested in mediumship, I'd love to invite you to something a little bit special. On Friday, the 28th of August at 7:30 p.m. UK time, I'm hosting a free online evening of mediumship with the wonderful Nicola Farmer. It'll be an evening of spirit communication, love, laughter, and connection. It's completely free, live on Zoom, and absolutely everybody is welcome. You'll find all the joining details in the episode notes, and I'd love to see you there.
Yeah. And that is key. That is so key. I did a dem recently. It was a charity evening. And what I found really important was educating the people in the room before I even started. Because giving them the heads up on how to receive a message, how to be part of a group, how to be part of the crowd in the room, and to honor each other in as much that, well, if you're not getting the message and this person is, then, listen in, because there could be a message inside the message for you. So all of those things is this education of mediumship, of receiving, of giving. There's this shift happening right now, Jason, and for me, I'm finding it really, really exciting.
How would you describe the shift?
I feel that shift is through the education of who are we, what we're here to do. But I kind of see it that there's a younger generation that's starting to take an interest. And in those younger generations, we've got the perfect opportunity to say, this is how a message is delivered. No two messages are going to be the same. No two mediums are going to be the same. Your expectations are going to hold things back. Let's just sit together and celebrate spirit. And that's what I see the shift being.
Begin with love. And it's even got me thinking I want to do mediumship my way. And that's, been a big recent shift in my mindset. And I want to deliver mediumship in a way that brings in more theatre to it, more manipulation of the energy. Because normally, traditionally, in churches here, mediumship is done in a way where, to be honest, I can't repeat the service too much because I haven't been to that many of them. But I think that speaks volumes. For me, it doesn't hold my attention enough. I don't find the inspiring bit inspiring. So what I want to develop at the moment is a routine that shows the boundless potentials of communication, the mind and what we can do as human beings, but doing that in a visual way where the inspiration is then a build up of the energy. So that's what I'm trying to work on with my mediumship. And it feels fun. It feels, and you know, it's bringing back, like you said earlier, the strands of my very beginning. The first ever job I had was being a magician. And actually, just the other day, it really touched my heart when I was going through my dad's possessions at his home in London. He still had the book because he would keep the books for me at
Oh,
15, 16. And I saw how much I was making. And I was making about £250 a week. But back then, that was
wow.
decent money.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm excited to bring some magic back into it. But,
Yeah.
you know, so just to bring this back then, you know, to be very clear about this, do you think some of the biggest limitations we experience then start off as the sentences we speak?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. You know, and my mediumship has been changing to the degree where there's much more humor coming into it.
Oh, me too.
The humor, and it's, you see, for me, we could have an audience full of people, whether it be in a church, whether it be in a centre. I mean, I know churches, there's more reverence involved, and you know, I don't have a problem with that, but it doesn't stop it being funny as well. You know, and as long as we're being reverent when we need to be, and you know, sensitive when we're talking about sensitive issues, that I see it being that we need to be natural. And if you're funny naturally, I can be funny naturally, and if we can bring us into it, not just being robots, not just being clones of somebody else, and bringing our natural essence into that space. Because if I'm talking to one person whose, you know, relative loved one is communicating, and I don't involve the rest of the audience, the energy's going to drop. So, you know, talking to one person is great, but keeping everybody else engaged with the humor or, you know, a comment or something, that's the key to that, how I see the mediumship changing as well.
Well, you want to hold the room, hold the audience.
Absolutely.
That's always something that I have been very, very aware of. And this is why I know that I was so sensitive when I was young, because throughout my life, whenever I have stood in front of rooms, I'm always, one of my worst fears is people turning off or looking like they're not holding attention. And actually, if there is someone like that in the room, I can really find that quite distracting. But it doesn't happen, you know, a huge amount. I sound like I'm blowing smoke up my own arse now. But you know, I think I am someone that is generally, you put me in front, I'm generally entertaining. You know, my thing is probably being a bit more serious at times, you know. But, you know, I know that laughter is, even when I used to do magic when I was younger, it was comedy. I used to do this trick, actually, which, you know, was very, I don't think I'd do it these days. Don't think it's in keeping with the times, but I was always a very charismatic young man. I used to take 2 blue silks and I used to tie them together, and I used to, you know, pick a lovely lady, maybe like yourself, actually. You'd have probably been a target of mine, because I think she looks quite nice, that one. She's not going to sort of roast me or be a heckler. But I'd tie my 2 blue silks together, and then I'd say, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this red one right now and I'm going to make it jump in between the 2 blue ones. But what I need is you just to tuck this down your top, because it's going to happen. And then what happens was I pull the 2 blue silks out, and then your bra would be attached to it. Obviously not your real bra, but that was the type of magic, you know. I used to like a bit of comedy. But, you know, there's a lot in mediumship, because when we're doing it and we're talking through what we're getting, there is, to bring that person to life involves more than the medium just saying what it is exactly that they're getting. You've got to bring it all together. You've got to communicate it in the right way. And being able to communicate with spirit doesn't necessarily mean you're the most charismatic person, because, you know, I have had readings, many, 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 many readings in my time. And the ones that move me are the ones where the power is there. You can feel the essence. And to get that type of message, and I delivered one recently in Amsterdam, the first lady that I read for, she was crying and crying and crying. But do you know what was interesting afterwards? She said she was a medium. And what you're saying about people knowing how to take it, when but being the perfect sitter enables the energy to keep building. I know when I need to say yes. I know to be quiet and not say something, because every time I'm speaking, I'm taking the energy off the medium. Be quiet, but you need to power it. So I'm the ideal person because I give a very firm yes.
Usually my worst nightmare.
Oh, well, you see, I'm a loud person anyway. I would adjust it, obviously, for the setting. But yes, I do know who that is. And yes, I can take that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be banging the table like I am now. But, there is something in people understanding that because, to put it this way, I used to go to a medium thinking, and this is crazy because my granddad was a medium, but like I said, I didn't ask him any questions, but I would go to a medium almost with sort of my arms crossed. Okay, I want evidence, I want proof. So, and if you send my brother to a medium now, he will go there with this attitude of being very closed off.
Yeah.
And I say, well, that's not really fueling. It was their job to prove. And I say, it's not their job to prove anything to you. But in order for you to get the most out of the experience, if you're just going to go in saying, well, nothing, then you're not. If someone comes to me like that and they're very closed off, it's. I can work with it, but straight away I want to get to the nub of, okay, why are they like that? Why are they being, in this way?
Have you ever stopped to ask them?
Yes, I have on one occasion. I haven't had many over. I don't have many people that come with that kind of attitude because I'm not sitting in a shop somewhere. You generally arrive on the Jason Paul website because you know me for some reason. But I've had it in when I do love a psychic fair, and actually, I've done readings in a lot of very hostile situations. When I used to do the old psychic lines, and when someone's paying £1.40 a minute, if they're not hearing what they want, I tell you, the phone is hung up. So it's interesting. So you've got
sitters' expectations are the biggest challenge. There's nothing worse than the sitter waiting for the code word that they set up with their loved one, their mum, their dad, before they died, and they go, right, Dad, when you come and communicate with me, say the word bananas. And that's a medium's worst nightmare because, you say about that £1.40 a minute or whatever it is on the line. Well, can you begin to imagine if we could put it into monetary form, how much it's costing spirit to communicate through a medium? And they've got their son, daughter, husband, wife sitting with the medium, and the sitter's got this sort of overwhelming desire or need to hear A, B, and C, and the person in spirit's going, but I need to tell you this, and I need to tell you this, and I need to share this, and it's like, whoa, everybody just step back a minute, step back, because what I think mediums sometimes forget, and I've done it myself, is who do I actually work for?
It's a very good question. My mindset now in my mediumship is I'm working for the spirit person. That's who I'm that's who not who my legal contract is with under consumer law,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that would stand up in a court, I work for the spirit world, do you now? But there is, it's an important distinction. It is an important distinction. And then you're going to ask, okay, so who's the person that I'm reading for? That's the customer. Yeah. The customer, the client. I am there for them, but I have to understand who I'm working for. Because if my mindset, and it was at the very beginning, that's why my mediumship for me, it felt like a long journey. At the very beginning, I was working for the customer, but my head was in the customer the whole time and not with the spirit person. What's your view on that? Who are you working for?
Oh, spirit every day. Because without a medium, spirit don't have a voice. unless they go direct communication. But for me, my client is the spirit person. The receiver of the information is the client that's sitting there in the human form. But for me, my spirit always come first. Always come first.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you are the receiver, you are the part of the telephone, and that's how I look at it now. And even my mediumship has changed so much if I look in the last 6 months, because now I'm aware that the language I will use when I'm doing a reading is, once I've established who it is, your mum tells me, and now she wants to talk about this, and now she wants to actually direct my attention over here to this. And it's building on that energy, because as soon as I always find in the connection as well, as soon as the spirit person has become identified, as long as you stay in that energy and in that power, as soon as they're getting that confirmation constantly of your mum saying this and whatever, it's building and building and building on the energy. And even when I get a no, what I will do now is I will immediately go back, which brings me back into the energy, and it's normally a misinterpretation, and I understand why. It's very hard to describe this, because this is when you want to describe your mediumship, it's difficult. But I understand when I get a no, it's because I flicked over for a moment to left brain, and then what I've got to do is not allow the no to put me back in the thinking brain and get myself even. Then you get one of those JCB moments, don't you, where you're drowning in the hole of no's, and then you see the medium struggle to get out of it. But another thing that I keep seeing mediums do is they will say something, but then the next 4 sentences that come out of their mouth is they're describing what it's not rather than what it is.
Yeah, I mean, let's just make it really clear. We're not picking holes in mediums here.
We're not sitting here as Michelin star food critics. I tell you that.
No,
We're not here with our rosettes, willing to give any out.
And these are pure observations of things that, we've watched and seen and experienced over many, many years. But I really believe, Jason, that the more we become that essence of spirit, the more we tell the story. And when you're telling the story, there is no space for yes or no's, because that story of a person's life that's passed over to the spirit world, and they're telling their story through you to the person that's sitting with you or to the audience, it should flow so much that there's no space for a yes or a no. And for me, if I have somebody say to me at the end of a one-to-one, or wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, that was just like sitting in Costa Coffee with my mum, having a chat. That's where the healing begins. And for me, if I get that at the end of a reading, then, I'll go and celebrate every aspect of that reading, because I gave myself to spirit.
And there's nothing like that feeling, is there, once you've had one of those moments?
No.
I like internally get the pom-poms out and start cheerleading on the sidelines. You've done well, lad. You've done well.
I always describe it as like, I don't often get people's names in spirit, and quite frankly, I'm not interested in what their name was anyway. But if I sometimes go, Jim wants you to know, and they go, that's his name. And I'm going, oh yeah, great. And on the inside, I'm going, oh my God, that's freaking amazing. Well done, Nick. Keep going, keep going. So I describe it as like the swan gliding across the water, and she's pedaling like crazy underneath to keep herself going.
It is like that.
Why shouldn't we celebrate those successes? I was doing this charity one the other week, and this guy was communicating, and both his ex-girlfriends were in the audience, and they decided to sit side by side for the reading. He was telling me that, he was really good looking. I'm saying, he's really good looking, and I went, and he was a bit on the chunky side. And I'm thinking, oh, Nick, you shouldn't have said that. And then these 2 women went, that's what everybody used to call him, chunky. Now, I had no intentions of, belittling this man, but that's what he said.
But that's a level of you've got to a stage in your mediumship where there's enough trust and enough surrender. And even recently, I do tend to attract a lot of funny spirit people. And I've noticed that I tend to attract certain personalities. Builders love me. I think it's something about my sense of humour. I've got builders' sense of humour. I seem to attract also a lot of people, ironically, that have fallen down the same rabbit holes as me in life. You know, with problems, you do attract a lot of those. You know, I went through a period of attracting a lot of people who'd gone to the other world having suffered from addiction. And it almost, was a stage of me thinking, well, why is every single reading reflecting different stages of my life?
You know what Spirit said to me once? Don't be under any illusion you only have word of mouth on earth.
What do they mean by that? Do you feel
that if you do a good job for a builder in spirit, they'll go and tell the other builders.
Yeah.
And it's true, because I used to get this run of people that had taken their own lives, and I sat with Spirit and I said, why does this keep happening? And they said, because you're doing a good job in presenting that way of passing to the spirit world. So, and that's when they said to me, we have word of mouth over here as well.
It's so fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
The boundless potential that we have.
Totally fascinating. And something about mediums as well, Jason, we should never ever become complacent and never ever stop the wonderment of it.
It blows my mind.
Me too.
That's why I just can't leave it alone, because I've started to become very much aware recently that I feel my granddad in spirit plays a far deeper role than I first realized. I believe that he's acting as almost like the receiver, and I feel that he's now moved into a position where he's become almost like a trainer from the other world. And I feel what happens, and this has been proved by a few times recently, where spirit people who are trying to get across something will then use imagery of my granddad, which makes me feel that what the process could be up there. And obviously, I will never know this, but I reckon, he says, right, you've been identified. They want to work with you. I'm going to get the sitter ready, to sort of be able to speak your language. And then he goes through a period of training, because my nan used to only ever come through with him. Then she went through a stage of speaking with him. Now it's like, I don't need you anymore, Eddie Paul. She comes through all by herself. Barging other people out the way. But that's, we will never know these things. And it blows my mind how, even telepathically, how the other world works, and how, we can do that very much here. And we do that through our mediumship. And,
I have that with my sister. She passed many, many years ago. In fact, she was the one who kicked my butt and got me on this journey through dream state. But, I ask them, I say to them, what's the process? Tell me, share that with me. Tell me what you do there so I understand it and how it plays out what we do here. And they're very open in sharing that. Very, very open. But, we need to be inquisitive as mediums, but not during the message, not during the communication. So, after I've finished a dem or a one-to-one, when I'm on my own, I'll connect with those spirit people again and say, how did I do? Did I give you, the right story? Did I portray you in the right way? And, they quite often say, yes, it was good. But I say to them, but tell me what I could do differently. So when I finish working with them, I'll sit and say, teach me, show me. What can I do? What can I do better? What could I have changed about that? And that is such a powerful exercise.
Well, yeah, you're doing the trust pilot to the spirit world. Most people do the trust pilot to the paying client. You're doing.
I don't care what the paying client thinks. I want to know what spirit thinks.
Well, it's interesting, because how many times have I done that? not enough. That's for sure. I know another topic that, you're very passionate about is science and mediumship. Now, these two subjects don't necessarily go side on side because it's safe to say, isn't it, that science proves mediumship is nonsense, and then mediumship proves science doesn't understand anything yet. And, these two areas do go back, forward and backwards. But there is a lot at the moment in this new dawn that we seem to be in, that you mentioned earlier. The two worlds are colliding, aren't they? They're coming together like more than ever before.
Yeah, and you know why? Because science has suddenly realized, or not suddenly, science has realized that what we do as mediums and the levels that we communicate on, this is consciousness. And in that level of consciousness, we know that there are. They've studied the science of it. I've done some. I did a podcast with Tom Campbell, who wrote My Big Toe, the theory of everything, and he's a quantum physicist. And for the last 20 plus years, he has been bridging the gap between science and spirituality in such a way that it's magnificent. But we've got to get past the fact that they are separate, because they're not. And for me, when we are working as mediums, there is a science to it, because we are delving into levels of consciousness that has been proven to have a conscious state that that aren't tangible to the touch, but the tangibility is through the spirit. So for too long, they've been seen as separate entities, and they're not. They're one.
Well, I think for a long time, science has tried to prove what reality is. And mediumship is, what raises the questions about consciousness, perception, information. But these two worlds are very close, because for me, my brain works in that way, that I kind of think, well, the levels of consciousness, that is kind of science, that is frequency, and I think my mind is already working in that way, where the two worlds are connected. But I think it's because you get to a point, I think, when you're thirsty to learn these things, where you connect dots. And I've been connecting the dots over years now in how all these things interact, I want to say, with one another.
I know. And, I've often questioned, and I do it so often, what does it mean to be spiritual? That's a whole subject on its own. But for me, spirituality is when we actually become consciously aware of the deeper nature of who we are. And then we recognize our connection to all of life everywhere. And then we allow the awareness to influence how we live. And if we look at those words in scientific form, there is no difference, because science are trying to prove something, and we're the living proof of it.
We are. Even the miracle of it, we're sitting here, all the thousands of ancestors that have been and gone before, and, the magic that it took to get us in this moment right now, and all we've been through all of our lives, every experience we've had to be here, we can overlook that.
I wonder, Jason, this is another $1 million question, but I wonder how many mediums know who they are.
Yes, and it's an interesting question, because it's how truly do you really understand and know yourself?
Exactly.
And I spent a long time in my life being the Jason I thought I should be, rather than the Jason I knew I was. And it's taken me, it's been a journey, and it has been to learn that, because even it was very complex for me, even just growing up as gay, because I wanted to be anyone other than who I was for a period of time. Shoved me in an all-boys school in Kent. I certainly didn't want to be having the feelings I was having, so I was suppressing it. But for a long time, I tied my sensitivity to being gay.
Yeah.
I've just said, well, I'm gay, that's why I'm sensitive, and you grow up in the world and the reality that you live in, don't you? Other people say, don't be so sensitive to that, it's,
Exactly.
it's like beating out the medium within you, word by word, isn't it?
It is. But, spirituality isn't necessarily what we believe. It is really how aware we are of how life changes the way we live. And for me, you don't wear a spiritual hat, you live it. You are the spiritual hat. And I think that gets lost in so many ways in mediumship and psychic abilities, because it's not something we do, it's something that we are.
It is. You know, at the beginning, we started with human beings. I really do believe this. We have so much potential. We can achieve things that seem absolutely impossible beyond all, you know, physical. I wouldn't even believe some of the things I've seen over a period of time on what humans can do. But it doesn't necessarily mean believe hard enough and you can do absolutely anything.
Yeah.
I think what it really means is we're far more capable, adaptable and intuitive and expansive than sometimes the identities that we've constructed around ourselves.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we don't have to connect to anything. We don't connect to spirit. We don't connect to anything. In our greater awareness, we understand that we are the connection. And when we take that need to connect away, then we have this, huge understanding that the greater source of life is through the connection to everything, including nature and each other. And this is just not about understanding how we're connected to each other. This is to the source of all life.
It is. And when you live in that way, it's amazing on what you can do and what you can achieve. And, I even recently, life can flow, can't it? Not everything has to be difficult. Not everything has to be a struggle. Not everything should be, take loads of effort. But we just attach those labels to ourselves. So Nicola Farmer, what final thoughts would you like to leave us on today then?
I would say to everyone right now that it's not about believing in what is possible. It's knowing that you are that possibility. And everything that you think about, of even attempting, it's always been there within you. And you're not going to find it outside of yourself. You're going to find it inside yourself. So know what are you doing, whatever you are with your mediumship, your psychic abilities, your healing or anything. The answers aren't outside you, they're inside. And when we get to know who we are and trust the process, that we are capable of absolutely anything, because human potential is so much more than we could imagine, then you will stand up there and be that medium, and you will be that representative for spirit and be their voice and be the storyteller of somebody's life that has left this world and wants to share their memories, their life stories, so that we know there is more to life than living in a human body.
And every possible outcome or thing you believe is a construct of a reality probably already existing, but I won't start going down those rabbit holes.
That's called consciousness, Jason.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been a delight. If you do want to come to our mediumship evening, details in the show notes, Friday the 28th, 7:30 p.m. UK time. Nicola Farmer, thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Loved it. Love you.
Oh, love you. Oh, my finger just slipped on the button there, just as I was about to say love you to her back. I'm only looking forward to the platform evening. It's only 3 sleeps away until I do that. Getting that little buzz of spirit energy in my stomach. I can feel it. Can be mistaken for nerves, but no, it's spirit building energy. If you do want to come along, you're more than welcome. Love to see you there. Until then, lots of love.